And once again, welcome. This is 800 Tech's second webinar on digital transformation. And this lunchtime, we would like to present to you 15 minutes to create a digital business process. Now, I cannot continue with this presentation without really spending a little bit of time acknowledging our business partners who have, in a very innovative way, assisted us in coming to the realization of how quickly and seamlessly digital transformation can take place within environments. Welcome, Netajoli. And I just want to give special mention to Ezra, Arun, Neil, and Uger, who have assisted us both in the training as well as in the preparation of this webinar today. Thank you for joining us and thank you for supporting us in this venture. So are you ready for greater efficiency? Are you ready to see how quickly, seamlessly, easily digital transformation can take place within your work environment? Now, for those that joined...
Nadia, just to cut you a bit, please. Just click on record to make sure the others who couldn't attend will have an opportunity to see the event.
Definitely. For those who joined us in our last webinar, we spoke extensively about the traditional way of doing a business process reengineering exercise. And I just want to take you through that process because you need to fully understand how we've now moved out of the traditional into a faster, quicker way of doing things, the innovative concept. Now, in the traditional space, and this is, of course, and the reason you would, if you look, you see I've actually separated this particular block, is because this understanding the vision of your client is something that regardless of whether we use the traditional approach or we use the business process management approach, you still need to understand the vision of your client. Once you've sat down and you've had that consultation with your client, the next step is now to create separate, each department within each organization. You now need to analyze the process that exists within each of those departments. So for example, if you're looking at the HR department, you will have to do an analysis of their leave management process, do an analysis of their performance management process, etc., etc. Now that analysis covers three key components: the process flow, and the process flow speaks to the data that is inputted into the environment, the steps and the resources that are required to complete that process, and then the output, the deliverable. And the deliverable can be a report, it can be an actual activity, as we all know. And then the other thing that we need to really examine is the performance baseline. What is the timeline? How long does it take from inception to end of this particular process? Because we really need to measure the efficiency levels when we introduce digital transformation into the environment. And then finally, the current challenges. And this is a critical component because when we do BPR, business process reengineering, one of the key components is also to mitigate against the current challenges, to make the space and the environment more efficient and more effective. And this is where we now have the re-engineering of the future process, where we've gathered all of this data and we're now taking each individual current process in the department and converting it into a future process where now all the current challenges are mitigated. We have looked at all the redundancies, all the bottlenecking that is taking place in that process, and we found a way to streamline that organization in a meaningful manner. And that takes place within the re-engineering of the future process. And once we've done that, then we have another step. And that's where we now take this information and it's handed over to our application developers, and they are now going to convert it into digital transformation application for you, what we call the DX development. And that is where whether we're going to be using Power Apps, whether we're using Dynamics, whether we're using SQL, depending on the environment of the client, we are now going to go forth and do the DX development. So as you can see, this process takes time. The end result is efficient and effective, but the process takes time. But what if there was a better way? What if there was a quicker, faster way to execute all of this? Now, as I proceed, please, I would like to invite everyone, feel free if you have any questions, comments, to just add it to the chat. And at the end of the conversation, we will definitely address all of your comments and questions. What if there was just one step for business process reengineering? And as I mentioned before, understanding the client's vision is a consistent tone. Whether it is we do it in a quicker way or a slower way, we must first understand the vision. What does the client want to achieve? We must ensure that the end product matches with that strategic vision. And what you see here happening is that once we have that understanding, we have now merged all of the multiple steps that you saw before, where there is an analyzing and a re-engineering of the current state into the future state. And a little later on, you will see my colleague Schofield take you through the process, so you will have a clearer understanding as to exactly what I mean. But under the analyzing and the re-engineering of the current state into the future state, we are doing the process flow while we are mitigating the current challenges. And simultaneously, and you will see it for yourself, I know it sounds a little impossible, but simultaneously, there is going to be the digital transformation development. And if you notice, I'm just going to pop back from before, you notice that the digital transformation development of the future state process was a separate step in the traditional environment. But now, in the future way of doing things, in the quicker, faster way of doing things, it is now incorporated as one clean, polished step. So let's not just talk about it. Let's actually take you guys through a live example of how this works. And what we've decided to do is actually use something that is quite familiar to most organizations, which is purchase requisitions. So I'm just going to take you through what the process flow would look like, the business process flow would look like, and then Schofield is going to actually take you through it in the live environment. So it starts off with, as you can see, on the far left, which would probably be the far right of your screen, where you're populating the purchase requisition. So this is the starting point or the initial stage of the actual process. And what would typically happen is that you would have it in an Excel sheet and you would be populating it in that format. In this particular example, either the department manager or the supervisor completes the purchase requisition, and then this electronic form, which might be an Excel, is then emailed or sent on to the purchasing department. As you can see here in phase 2, the approval and the processing of the purchase requisition takes place. In this space, the document is sent on to the purchasing assistant. The purchasing assistant now needs to verify this document, needs to ensure that all the requisite information has been included in the document. Then, once this is done, it is then sent on to be evaluated and approved by the purchasing and distribution, which is P&D supervisor. When the purchasing and distribution supervisor looks at it, this is where we know what we call a decision box comes up. Is everything populated as it should be? Is there a reason or justification for the purchase of the item? Now, what you would see happening is 2 steps. If it's not completed accurately, and you would see down here in step 4, if it's not, then it's rejected and returned to the requisite department manager or supervisor to adjust and fix the information. And there'll be notations, of course, as you can expect, on the document, which will tell them what's missing so that they can insert the requisite information. However, if the information is clean and clear and accurate, as you can see with the yes arrow, then it moves on to the purchase order phase. And in this particular example, with this particular client, the purchase order is then generated into Sage or any other accounting software that you may have, and the process continues thereafter. So what we're going to do, guys, is actually take you through this process using the new solution, eFlow. So
Okay, guys.
It's now going to take you through.
Okay, guys. So some things that I want to point out. Not every company would have their forms emailed. Some forms are actually physical forms, and those physical forms move from desk to desk. I hope that you all are seeing my screen.
Yes, we are.
All right, great. So Another thing that I want you all to understand, now I am not a programmer. I am not into coding. I have very little knowledge of developing applications. What I do is manage the process. And I took it upon myself to challenge myself to see how simple this process could really be. I've had minimal training in utilizing this application, and I'm here to tell you it is an application that is quite simple to use. It's called Low Code Solutions, and it's really low code that everyday persons could utilize. Your IT personnel, it doesn't even have to be a manager, it could be a regular IT personnel, it could be a member of staff. Anybody could actually utilize this application. So what we're looking at here is our demo environment that we've created.
Scofield, we're not seeing your screen. Sorry, right now we're seeing you still. You may have to reshare.
Hold on a sec. Are you seeing my screen?
The PowerPoint.
Okay, hold on. I see it now?
Yes, we are.
All right, great. Okay, so this is the application that we're going to be utilizing, which is eFlow. eFlow, again, as I said, is a low-code solution, and I'm going to walk you through the phases. We'll come back to the screen a little later on, but let's go into the actual designer, where we have all the creativity happening in here and the magic, actually. So I'm going to log into the eFlow designer. And in the eFlow designer, here is where we're actually going to create the workflow process and digitize our form at the same time. So there are 5 key components that we're going to utilize today, 5 tools, and I'm going to pull them out for you, which is the manual tool. The manual tool. Then we're going to have the task tool. The task form. Okay, just waiting for it to drag and drop. Yeah, I think there's a significant delay with the. All right, so these are the 5 forms that we're going to utilize. So I'm going to have to try and copy them instead of dragging them. Let's copy that. Let's paste it over here. All right, so my system is giving some trouble. Let's paste. All right, hold 1 second. Let me just pull this up as we go. All right, let's restart this process. All right, so for whatever reason, it's not pulling it across. But as with technology, we have to always find a way around the process. So the good thing is I've created this process before. So what I'm going to do now is show you the process that I've already created and probably walk you through those phases instead. I think that's going to be a little easier and faster. So this is the actual process that we're going to create that we're going to demonstrate. So if you notice the 5 tools I was calling out before, which are the start tool, the manual start tool, then we have the task form as the second tool, and then we had the terminate tool, so that's 3 of them, and we also had the calculate tools, and I'll explain to you what these things are going to do, and also the terminate and the email tool. So these are the 5 tools, the main 5 tools that we're going to be utilizing. And what is important, I want to show you guys, is completely drag and drop. You could actually reposition these things as you like. So it's very simple. I could probably see if this one will allow me to pull it in. Okay, so here we go. It's allowed me to pull it in here, and I could actually show you how to drag and drop and connect. So it's very simple. You just pull one end of the tool, and you connect it just like that. So what I'm going to do now is walk you through the process that we have created here. All right, so so we started off with this tool, and we can rename this tool anything you want to. So let's call this PR. Let's see, purchase rec. So this is purchase rec. Who you want to assign this to, or who you want to access this tool. In this case, we're going to say everyone. I could assign it to myself only if I wanted to. I could also assign it to a group of individuals. It all depends on how you want to do it. So it all depends on how you have your structure in your organization. You can actually utilize this section to actually indicate which department or which group of personnel will have access to the tool. So we say okay. Then we're going to come back to these two calculate tools thereafter, 3 calculate tools. But what I want to go into is the meat of the matter here, which is the task form. So let's go. We dragged across the task form, and this is what the task form looks like. Of course, we can give the task form a name also. We can rename the task form. So we give it a name. And again, we can actually say who it's assigned to. So all of them, we could actually have this granular control. But how do we get the elements onto the task form? So the task form is really your page. It's your form where you actually create your entry, your data field entries into your process. So if you look down to my bottom left, you're going to notice there are a number of elements in here. These are all items contained in your task form. So if I may switch back, I'm going to switch back quickly to the actual physical form. This is what the physical form looks like. So if you notice, we have the PR number, the PO number, same day purchase a checkbox, date requested, date required, and then we have a table here with name, ID, item ID, sorry, item description, item class, quantity, and unit. And then we have a comment box to the bottom here where we have reason for request. So we're going to go back again. So what we're going to create is those same names that you saw there. We're going to create them because the whole idea of digital transformation is making your process as simple as possible for your users. So you leave the fields that they are accustomed to seeing. You leave those items in, so that is an easier transition for them. So how do we add fields here? We click anywhere in here, right click, new element, and you give the new element a name. I'm just going to duplicate one of the names. Okay, let me just give it a new name. Let's say new log sheet or new log table. Let's just say new log table. And when you get a little more familiar with applications, you will know what the element types are. But for now, I'm going to leave it on string. And I'll show you one with a different element type just now. And I say OK. That's actually creating an entry. So creating the entry is actually creating one of these. So if you notice, you'll see PR form, and let's go to PR form, and there's a PR number, date request, there's a date field. So if you go back to the application, and let's go to date requested. If you notice date requested, what is the format it's going to come up in? It's going to come up in a date format. All right. So each field actually captures the pertinent information for the request. So let's see. Okay. Let's go to the PR number. Okay, so we gave it a name, and these are very simple. Department PR is going to be a string because we're going to actually feed it information. So we're going to leave it as a string. There's one that is different. Now, if you notice, they look different here, some of them. This one is date, and this one is actually the table that we're creating. So, and you create a table the same way. And I'm going to create one to show you, for instance. If I wanted to change this into a table, the new log form, I double click on it, open it. And instead of saying data type string, I would then go to data type line item table. And I say OK. And if you notice, it's going to change into a table. How do we add information to this table? So we double click on it again. We go into the element and we click on edit table. And now if you could utilize Excel, you can utilize this application quite easily. And in here, you add your columns. So let's say test 1, because I don't want to create duplicate, test 2, and you can add as many as you want, test 3. All right, you say OK. In here also, on later webinars, we will show you when we get a little more complex, how you could actually do some computation. You could actually utilize a table to give you totals, subtotals. You could actually do a lot more function in here. But for the purpose of the webinar today, and because we're now introducing this tool to you, we're going to keep it simple. and we're going to come back on another webinar to show you how complex we can actually get with these tools. So I'm not going to save this, and I'm going to go into the actual tool for the webinar, which is the purchase supply table. So let's edit the table here. And if you notice, you have the name, the ID number, item description, item class, quantity, and unit. All right, if I go back again, these are the same things that we see here on our physical form. All right. So now that we understand that part, let's go back to our flow chart. And I'm going to call it flow chart for simplicity. So once we created the data elements here, which are the items that we want to capture on our form, we're going to open our task form. And when we open our task form, we're going to go to the data elements tab. Data elements, and what we're going to do is we're going to click on this box here to say show, and this will actually show the actual item or the element that we want to capture information for. So once we click on show, so we already have the department PR, the date requested, the PO number, the date required, and so on as we go down, even the log section that we want to capture information into. Now, once we've done that and we selected these data elements, we say OK. Now, how do we connect this to a process? So what we do is we could actually just click from here, which is the start. Now, something I forgot to mention, anything with the arrow on the right-hand side are start elements. They all starting tools, they actually start processes. So this is a manual start form. So we actually utilize the manual because we have to initiate this form. It's not going to be automatic. So we're going to have this in manual initiation. What we could have actually done from here is just go from here straight across to our task form and connect it there. That is fine. We could do that. But what happens if we do that? When we open up our form, we're going to have to actually fill out these elements. The date requested, the PO number, and the department PR number. These are the three things we'll have to fill out. Now, anything that we want to select or have defined automatically, these are what these tools are for, the calculate tools, right? So let's say, for instance, the one that is different is date requested. So date requested, we give it a name because it's going to come up blank. We say date requested. What we want to calculate, the date requested, select from the data element, and then we select the expression, which is now. Now, there are other expressions within here. And again, we will go through these at later webinars when we show you the functionality and the power of eFlow. So that has been selected. We also have the PR number. So we open the PR information, and what we want to capture is an instance. So the instance will actually assign a PR number to this process. All right. Likewise, the PO number, very similar in kind. So the PR and PO number are going to be the same in this example. So what I want to do at this point is I want to run across to what the actual form will look like at this point in time. So we actually go and we launch the form. And we click on the webinar form and we click on start. Now, this is the manual start that we are speaking about. All right. So we click on start. And this is the first task form that we just created. All right. This is our first task form. If you notice, it selected the date automatically. It selected the PO number, gave it a number 970 for both PR and PO number. This date required here, we had to leave this one manual because it could change. So anybody could actually select a date. Now, because we select a date element, if you notice, we have a date picker coming up. So we select date. Same day process, we created these radio buttons, yes or no. So we selected yes. And I'll go back and I'll show you how we created these radio buttons in a minute. And remember that table that we created, this is the table here. So we saw it. I'll just go back here in the table. I'll just pull up the table here. Hold on a sec. All right, so in the table, if you remember, we created the elements in here. This is what it is. And on the other side, this is what we're seeing here. So how we actually enter data, we click on new line, and you can actually populate information as you go along. All right. Reason for the request, also same thing. We put in any reason that we want. Now, if you notice, within 5 minutes, we can actually create a digital form. Now, this is one part of the process. This is the initiation point of the actual form. So I'm going to click on cancel and we're going to continue. Now, how did we create that cancel button there? And how did we create the other buttons? Now, there was something I was going to show you prior to. Let me just cancel this. All right, cancel here. All right. So how did we get the yes, no? Same day purchase. Let's create that data element. And it's a string. And what we did is we went into choices. So choices, yes, no. What we want it to be, a drop-down field, a text field, a radio button, a pop-up select. In this case, they were custom to checkboxes. So we left it as check boxes and we created the choices. If we wanted, we could create another choice here for them and we could keep on adding choices as we go along. So let's cancel that. So the question was, how did we get that terminate or cancel button? So that's where the cancel tool come in. So this cancel tool is what we utilize here. It's the same cancel tool. All we did with that cancel tool is drag it into place, and then we connected the data element from here to the cancel tool. Let me just make sure I get that running. One second. All right, so we just pull a line and we connect it to the cancel tool. All right, and that will give you the cancel button. If you notice here, button name, this came up. This is how you actually create your buttons, and I'm going to show you. So I'm going to create additional button here and show you. Let's call this button demo cancel. So let's see how that's going to look. Now, once you make a change to your process flow, what you have to do is you click up here and you save. Once you save it, then you go in and you activate. And then once you activate your process, you would see your process live. So let's go back to the form. Let's click on start. Now, if you notice, demo cancel came up as a button. All right, so that's how easy it is to create buttons in this process. So let's cancel here again and go back to our designer. So I'm going to terminate this part because we don't need this part. All right, so you understand now what the terminate button will do. Now, when we have a form, we want our form to go to the next approver, which is the supervisor. So this form is supposed to go to the supervisor. So after the employee or initiator signs up or submits all the information in this form, it's supposed to go to the next in command, which is the supervisor, for verification.
So purchasing assistant, Schofield.
Purchasing assistant, sorry.
Yeah.
So the first thing we could do is we copy this form. So right click, copy the form, and then we paste it. And once we paste it, the form is going to come back up with the data elements in it. So if you notice, the same data elements as before. But in this scenario now, the supervisor doesn't have to fill in any information. They just have to verify the information. So because they have to verify information, what we do is we make all the data fields that were inserted before read only. That's the purpose we do that. And it's a simple, fast process. You pull back up your data elements and you select check, 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 read only for the data elements that you don't want any changes to. And remember that we had a log element for the supervisor to put information in if they approve it, on what grounds they approved it, if they rejected it, on what grounds they rejected it. So we include a log section, which is basically a comment section to the bottom of the form, and we make that mandatory. So they have to actually put in information before they could actually cancel, reject, or send for approval, right? Which is the second form. And once we paste this task form, then we pull a connection from here again, all the way down into the input of the task form so that it will go to the next step. And of course, a button is going to come up. When you drag it, it's going to come up with a button, and you name that button whatever you want to name it. Submit for verification or just verification of process. You can name it whatever you want at this stage and point. And this is phase 2. So if we jump on, or before we jump on, we can also select a rejection also for this. So let's say, for instance, they want to reject the form because it's missing information. So for rejection, we just pull a line again from here, all the way back up to the initiation point or the start point of this actual form to restart the process. So it's just drag and drop, literally drag and drop. You know, you pull from a data point, you pull it out, and then you go all the way up into the point that you want to restart from. So whatever field you want to restart from, you drag it and you go straight into there. That's how it's going to work. And that's simply it for phase 2. So let's go into our form and see what it looks like at phase 2. Okay, and start the process. All right, so let's fill in some dummy info. The date, they wanted on the 16th. Same day purchase, let's say no, because it's not the same day. And then, okay, why is my computer sticking? You click a new line. Test item, oil, item description, OB25, item class, OC3. Quantity we want in this is 5. The unit is 16, let's say, for instance. Request, stock counts low, and we click submit for verification. All right, so this is the second task form that we created. Now, if you notice, all the information that we had previously, it's still here. And that's because we selected read only. And if you notice, you can't change anything in this section because I am now operating as the supervisor in this section. So I cannot change anything here because my purpose is simply to verify this process. So if at this point in time I recognize, okay, something is missing, I have no information, or I don't have a report that's required for it, I could just reject this at this point in time and say to this the requester, stock report required. Let's say that. Stock report required, and I click on reject. And it's going to start the process all over. Now, if you notice, my comments is going to come back up. Now, I'm back as the initiator here. And again, you notice I can change data elements here now if I wanted to, because I'm now the initiator. It's sent back to the initiator. So I could actually say to see what my supervisor indicated at this point in time. They needed the stock report first. So I'm like, okay, I have to set them the stock report and then resubmit this. Or if not, I could change an item here. If they said, okay, the item code is incorrect, or the class is incorrect, or the quantity is incorrect, I could correct that and then resubmit for verification. So I'm going to submit again for verification, and I want to move on to the next step with the designer so I can show you what's happening here. So we're at this point here in the form. Now we have one more stage in the verification process that we have to complete. So again, we copy this form, and then we paste this task form again. Now when we do that, the data elements are going to remain, which is the good part. Data elements are going to remain in this section. And again, this is whom Nadia, the purchase manager now. Okay, so the purchase manager now would they would have read-only access also, because again, we don't want them in this process to be able to change anything. Now, if we wanted the purchasing manager to be able to make changes, we can also do that. We just unselect or deselect all of these options here, or whichever fields we want them to be able to change, we can do that. It's that flexible. And again, we make the log mandatory so they could say exactly why it is they want, why it is they're approving the process for management to see. So same process again. If we wanted to, we drag and we drop to restart the process and send it back to the supervisor. So dragging and dropping, we pull a line again, straight up to the to this task form, which is the verification task form, and we name that button rejected. So rejecting it back to this form. If the process in your company was to send it back to the initiator, we can also do that. we drag and drop from here. We would not use this task form at this point in time, but we would drag it and send it to the initiator task form. All right, so just so that you understand. But in this process, it goes back to the first point, which is the supervisor in this case. So once we do that, we get a reject button to send it back to this point. And once this supervisor or this manager, purchasing manager, approves this process, an email is sent out. So this is the only point where we utilize our send email tool. This tool, we put in the information of all those in the process that needs to be notified, giving them a summary of what was approved. This is where we're going to have this done in the send email section. So it's a very smooth process and it's quick and easy. So let's continue the process on this side so that we can see what it looks like. So I'm going to approve it here. Just for the purpose of the webinar, and I'm going to submit for approval. And of course, it's going to move forward and it's going to look, I'm going to be working now, operating now as the purchasing manager. So I'm the purchasing manager, so I can look at the form, I look at all the data elements, I see they're okay. And my next step is to submit this for approval. Now, I'm just going to show you something. I'm going to submit for approval. Remember, we had our log form selected as mandatory. So I cannot do anything unless I put information here. Which has approved for purchase, and then I can submit an email. Now, once we have this configured properly, the company, your email will be utilized, and then an email will be sent out utilizing whichever email account that you selected. And it will go out to both internal customers if you have to send internally. If you want to send a copy to your vendors, doesn't matter how you want to structure it, it can be structured quite easily utilizing the eFlow system. So this is a nice little flow chart that we did for you here. Now it's quite simple. If you notice, everything is drag and drop. And the beauty of this is you can redefine your process at any time you want to redefine your process. If at this point you want to shorten your verification process, or if you want to remove a process, it's quite easy. It's simply just deleting and reconnecting the lines. That's it. It's once you use a flow chart, you can utilize eFlow. So if you have any questions, guys, we'll be taking your questions now. I hope you enjoyed this little demo that we did for you. Now, also the email address that you can submit information to is info@800-tech.com. Again, info@800-tech.com. And once you submit your questions, your queries, or if you want us to demo a process for you, we can do that. We're offering free consultation up to that point, and we can show you how quick and easy it is for you to be able to execute in digitizing your business process. So, feel free to send us an email. And something I need to mention too now, a lot of us have issues with connecting to legacy software. eFlow can do that quite easily. And again, in a future webinar, we're going to show you how we connect to additional databases. We are currently working on an application or solution to connect a legacy database for a client to create a process flow. And but the process flow is quite extensive. And once we do that, we're going to pull and push data towards their legacy database. So you can connect to legacy databases, Excel, you name it. We can actually utilize eFlow to connect those processes for you.